And what will be the future in terms of security affairs in Thailand during this COVID-19 and post-COVID-19? Right now we have Professor Panitan Wattanayagorn, Chairman of Prime Minister's Security Advisory Committee, joining us. Good evening สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์
สวัสดีครับคุณณัฐฐาครับสวัสดีครับคุณเทพชัยครับ
สวัสดีครับ Very good evening to you. I noticed that you just had a haircut.
Yes, right? For the first time in 2 months. Adopting a very new procedures that the barber have to wear protective gears and have a haircut in the open space. Open space is a problem. We need to find a better location rather than a usual barber shop. But of course, barber shop is now open with a new measure. So I think this is a new beginning of the new phase that we are now living. A more relaxed on one hand, a more worry on another hand, because of more activities, more social interactions that could bring more cases up in the next few weeks. So this is very closely monitored by different agencies.
Yes. And Ajahn Panitan, any points of concern for you in particular during this easing of restriction after the first round and the second phase probably is coming?
Yes, there are a few concerns, of course. Number one, I think the feeling of safe and secure could be misleading for the people. You see the number of cases down into the single digit, as Kun Tepachai mentioned. But you notice that it began to rise in the last few days from almost zero cases, and now you can see 6 cases, 7 cases, 8 cases in the last few days. Particularly the concentration is in the south, on the tourist town and border towns. So I think false perception could be one of the main concerns as people are now resuming their activities. You see many reports on restaurants do not follow the procedures, different offices do not follow the procedures. The police and the healthcare people are now putting together a rapid unit, mobile unit to give suggestions to the people to follow a strict guideline. So that's number one. Number two, also slightly the violation cases are down, especially in terms of breaking the curfew or in terms of not assemble more than a few people at home. You see a slightly down, in the last few days, but this number was rising up, in certain places, in certain areas. And lastly, of course, Kun Tepachaiครับคุณพัฒนาครับ political activities are now up. You can see a lot of communications leading to preparation in terms of protesting in terms of course, the packages, relief packages, protesting in case of check and balance in terms of how the budget is used by the government, or protesting in certain areas like around today and last few days in the north for more opening up, more ease measures in certain areas. So you see these activities maybe rise up in the next few days.
Yeah. Dr. Panitan, we'll talk about the political activities later on, but on the larger scale, do you foresee the possibility of some of the stringent shutdown measures being reintroduced if the situation gets out of hand? Say there are, certainly a surge in the number of new infection cases.
Well, I think we are on a, of course, downward trend. It's very lucky for Thailand, and of course, thanks to the Thai people. I think they have been very much able to cooperate among each other, among different agencies. but this downward trend may go up, as you can see in our neighboring countries. I think Malaysia is now extending their measures for the fifth time until June, until early June. I think that's an indicator in certain different countries in South Korea and in other places. Of course, you have places like New Zealand are now stepping down to the level 3. I think 2 more levels from the highest alert. But in Thailand, we have to wait and see. We have to evaluate every day as we go in the next few days. The National Security Council Secretary General already indicated yesterday that it might be possible for more lifting, of the strict measures, including the emergency decree. But this is not determined yet. It depends very largely in the next few days, really.
Yeah, but lifting of emergency decree would be in the next phase, like third phase or fourth phase, not in second phase.
Well, I think if you ease the restrictions, it will be more practical for the different agencies to step down their measures. But if you lift the emergency decree totally, there are a lot of mechanisms must be dismantled. Some of the centers, some of the orders must be lifted or cancelled. So that will leave the authority very, very worried that they are lacking of the effective tools. They may have to go back and use the healthcare codes and restrictions. But as you know, in the last few months, that's not enough to really control, the spread of the virus. So this is a very critical decision making that the administration must make in the next few days.
Yeah. Dr. Panitan, you talk about the daily evaluation of the result of the easing of the shutdown measures, right? And now we have been in second week of the easing of the restrictions. So out of 10, how much do you think that we have achieved?
Well, the survey is still going on. I'm sure Kun Thepachai, Kun Natha have completed a survey already of the center. If you are not completing, I urge you to complete that survey. I think the evaluation will be more completed with participation from the public. But of course, I think the satisfactory level is quite high in terms of cooperation. I think the authority is quite certain that they can handle the situation. The level of satisfactory from the public is also high for the administration's handling. I think we are moving into the second phase. I think much better in shape, and form than many expected. But of course, this can turn very, as warned today by the government persons, this can turn very drastically, change into a very significant, serious problem. So you have to be very careful and exercise cautious. It's very common sense, Kun Natha, Kun Thepachai. You go out more, you have more contacts. The virus is still around. It's very, very true that the virus is very honest. They will not pick and choose anyone. They will get infected. So the virus is still out there, and we don't know much about this virus. I think the impacts, the consequences, the way they're spreading, we learn almost every day. The scientists learn almost every day. So you have to be very careful in this period. But at least life needs to return to normal. That's indeed, it is true. I think shutting down completely affect enormous economic and society. We don't know how very many actually have a serious impact until we completed the survey, but estimate is very, very serious to the society. So you cannot lock down and shut down like this anymore. You need to move on. This is a second phase that you need to have a good balance. Once a vaccine arrives, if it is arriving in the next year or two, then you can move into the new society, new production, new structure. But that new society must begin today by evaluating every day how we are going to do about our life in the new world, in a new society. You need to be very serious about tool and mechanism to change the society, production, tourism, and others. I'm sure you're going to talk about that today. But that period is now. You need to begin to map out the exit strategy. You need to point out to the people what kind of light at the end of the tunnel. Once vaccine arrives, how are you going to distribute the vaccines, and how are you going to go out and do things after that? That's the third period. It will be even more challenging as we now know that we need to adopt a new life. I think, for me, I think the classes on campus will begin soon in the next few weeks. I think we cannot go back to the old same classroom anymore. I think the new application online, the online learning are now in full swing, and it will not go away. I think this is also together with cyber crimes, a lot of problems on internet. This will be with us for a long, long time.
อาจารย์ปณิธาน with the right now we are, as you mentioned, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we have to start planning for exit strategy. And what do you see contact tracing, the use of contact tracing, because people may be suspicious whether it will intervene between privacy, their personal privacy and security? That's the same old issue. What do you think the authority should try to communicate with Thai people?
Well, of course, I think you need to have a good balance. In the beginning, of course, in the first phase, you need to control the spreading of the disease, of the virus. I think security must come first, and then maybe freedom may be put into second. But it has to go together, actually, in the second period, hand in hand. And this is not surprising that we have two important now laws effectively. One is, of course, cyber security, protecting infrastructure, protecting the security of the use, on online. And at the end of the month, as you know, we have a data privacy protection law will be in place on the 27th of this month. That will give a good balance and to ensure young generation that their privacy will be protected. But this has to be, of course, a common ground for two different groups of people who are concerned differently to meet and to work together. We are expecting that in the next few weeks, the debate on how to achieve a good balance between security and privacy, between freedom and security, will return, to the society, and it will be a very hot debate in this period.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Panitan, we have been coping with the pandemic mostly from the health aspects, which is understandable because doctors have been calling the shots mostly. But I'm sure that as the chairman of the Security Advisory Committee of the Prime Minister, you must have a security perspective on this pandemic too. So what is it?
Well, I think, of course, it's very early to predict, as most analysts are saying, but of course you need to do that anyway. You're already anticipating more problem ahead between relationships of superpowers, and that's quite clear. You can see some of the productions being down, we move out from different countries to different countries. I think supply chain are now disrupted. Some may not come back. Critical infrastructures, some will be expanding, some will be collapsing. So, for example, I think the cyber internet will be up and running even more. I think that will be has to be prepared. I think tourist industry must change. I think airlines industry must change. The military must change. They need to plan much better in terms of new emerging diseases. They need to pull up that plan to a higher priority. They need to train more officers. They need to have maybe permanent certain units and infrastructure like Sattahip sanctuaries or quarantine. They need to have a permanent staff or budget. All of this must be recalculated in the framework of the national strategy. It's mandated by the Constitution, and I think we are now beginning to map out this new structure. It's still too early, but yet you can sense that there are some things that cannot be the same. The bureaucracy, many of them may have to stay at home, work from home, and many others must retrain, upskill. But of course, the world is still full of conflicts, and also productions must resume to feed the hunger. Food industry will be very good for Thailand. Health industry, healthcare should be very good for Thailand. But how? In what way? Who will do it? Under what plan? These are very tough questions.
We have been having military exercises with our allies, right? Like the annual Cobra military exercises. Maybe it's about time that we started thinking of having exercises to deal with pandemic like this.
We have. In the last few years, we have two kind of exercises alternating. For example, the light year will focusing on humanitarian and healthcare crises. Less than 10,000 forces may engage. We may need to change that in the future. The heavy year will be with conventional war fighting exercises involving more than 10, 15, 20,000 troops. We may need to switch that in the future. But then again, you're not certain at seas what happened in South China Sea. You're not certain about North Korea. It may not change by the virus. These conflicts may not change. In fact, they may be even more intensified. So these are the calculations that the military must make.
อาจารย์ปณิธาน political activism seems having long pause during COVID-19, but right now we see Hong Kong protesters try to stage their protest again in Hong Kong. 200 people try to group together, having their own political gathering. What about Thailand? What's the future do you see, and what will be the implication on security issue?
Well, I think the check and balance is quite normal and typical in the bipartisan politics in many countries. I think Thailand included. I think the young generation in particular are very much interested in checking the power of the military, of the government, of the bureaucracy. But on the other hand, the performance of this current administration was much better than expected. I think people see the usefulness of the emergency decree. People see the usefulness of the leadership during crisis. It's up to the current administration to really not mishandling the second period, meaning that they need to achieve a good balance. They need to focus on clamping down the corruption during, the emergency, distributing emergency packages, economic recovery. This is going to be very tough. They need to make sure bureaucracy is effective, efficient in helping millions of people who are out of job, and we don't know how many registered, maybe 1.4 to 2 million workers out of job, but the real numbers could be higher. So you need to reach out to these people, and it's going to be very critical. If the government doesn't do well in this, I think politics could be nasty or messier. But if the government is doing well, I think the people may accept that leadership well beyond the second phase.